Hi everyone, we're just waiting on a few more people, so make yourself at home. It won't be too long before we start. Hello? Make yourself at home. We're about to start shortly. Hi everyone, great to have you here.
Go ahead, Arlette.
Great. We'll start now. So good morning everyone and welcome to Doing It Right, Respectful Brand Alignment with First Nations Art, a NAIDOC Week webinar presented by Copyright Agency. My name is Arlette Martin and I'm the Visual Arts Business Development Manager here at Copyright Agency. It's my absolute privilege to host this session today. I'm very excited to be here, especially with our amazing guests that are about to come on. To begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands I'm joining from today, Gadigal country. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend that respect to all First Nations people with us and thank them for their ongoing care of this land and its waters. A few quick housekeeping notes. I'm doing mine right now. I'm silencing my phone. This session is being recorded and will be available after this event. You can submit questions for the panel anytime during using your Q&A function. And if you'd like to turn on captions, you can do so via the Teams setting. Just click the three dots on the right-hand side and turn on live captions. Let's now begin by welcoming our first guest, Dr Terri Janke. Terri is a board member of Copyright Agency. She is a specialist in Indigenous cultural and intellectual property, or ICIP, and the author of True Tracks. Over to you, Terri.
Well, thank you, Arlette. Debbie Adeem, good morning, everybody. Debbie Adeem, good morning in Merriam language. I'd like to thank you all for having me today. I'm honoured to speak with you as part of NAIDOC Week. It's a time of reflection, celebration and responsibility for First Nations people. This year, the theme is the next generation, strength, vision and legacy. And with that, I'd like to acknowledge all of the people that helped me in my career and gave me the inspiration and the leg up to do what I do, and just passing that on to the next generation for strength, resilience, and may they, as the future leaders, be strengthened by our legacy. I acknowledge traditional owners of the lands I'm joining from today, and I'm on Bidjigal country. It's beautiful and sunny here, and I pay my respects to this country, the ancestors, and to elders. Also, just big shout out, big yucca to all any Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people on the call today, and to our allies, just thank you for your interest in this topic. As Indigenous people, art stories and culture is important for us to share with the world, but with that comes respect. And to the topic today, talking about doing it right, respectful brand alignment with First Nations art, I just want to speak to the work that I do as a lawyer, but also as a board member of the Copyright Agency. And in recent years, we've seen a real rise in Indigenous art across a whole lot of different platforms, from clothing, stationery, homewares, digital platforms, public art. And I think this visibility is a good thing. Doing it done right, it celebrates culture, it builds connection, and of course, it creates income streams for Indigenous artists. But too often it's not done respectfully. And we've seen brands copying art without permission, separating the design from the story, commodifying culture without the people. So sometimes, you know, with the fake arts that are being sold in Australia, but they're produced overseas and they're sold as Aboriginal style, they're not made here. So there's no acknowledgement and no fair return. And we know that this can cause personal and cultural harm for Indigenous artists and communities. It leads to what I call cultural flattening, where this diverse and sacred cultures are reduced to generic patterning. And with AI and being involved these days, the mimicking of Indigenous styles can lead to further cultural flattening, so it imposes even more risks. So we do have copyrights. You know, copyright law protects artistic works if you meet those requirements, but often it requires, you know, artists being able to take action. And it protects works that are created by individual artists, not the collective designs, stories are embedded in the works. So, you know, it causes this harm to culture. And this is where the work that I've been doing in Indigenous cultural and intellectual property comes into play. Indigenous cultural and intellectual property refers to the rights Indigenous people have to their cultural expressions, their knowledge, their songs, stories, languages, designs that are passed on through the generation. They come from country, and it is the roles and responsibilities of people today to nurture and hand on that culture. So when culture is copied without consent, it breaks that role and responsibility, that act of cultural practice. And we can't use existing laws to protect that at the moment. Copyright can assist where, as I said before, the requirements of copyright are met, the individual artist gets the copyright, it has moral rights too within the law of attribution and integrity, but not the collective. So this is why ethical practice, doing it right, matters. And the True Tracks principles have been developed by me to ensure respectful engagement with Indigenous artists and their communities. And there's 10 of them. They are also the foundation of the First Nations Cultural and Intellectual Property Protocol put out by Creative Australia. And I'd like to go through them now. So firstly, the principle of respect is up as number one. And here we recognise the custodianship of Indigenous people over their land, water and culture, and ask how the project is respecting that. And by going to an Indigenous person when you're doing an Indigenous arts project is acknowledging that respect. 2 is self-determination. It should be Indigenous people who lead decisions about how their Indigenous cultural and intellectual property is used. So that is around including them in decisions about being the artist, the context, and how it's used. 3 is consent and consultation. So with this one, it is about seeking free, prior and informed consent. It's not that because Indigenous artists follow clan-owned designs passed down through the generations that their work is in the public domain, or terra nullius. It is still part of a cultural tradition, so you must get consent. And it's not a one-time thing. You've got to think of ongoing, having an ongoing conversation. So this is where the concept of negotiated use rather than getting blanket clearances is important to consider. Always ask, you know, is this consent being understood by the artist? And in that respect, when you do get consent, don't get assignments of copyright where copyright is totally handed over. A license is much more respectable. Principle 4 is interpretation. So with this, I'm talking about how the meaning and the context of the story behind the image, how the story is used, should be considered in any reproduction. We're having a lot of focus on, for example, where there's public art, that there be, local artists to tell that story, or recognition, and working with local traditional knowledge holders. So you'll hear Indigenous people say, our stories, our way. I'm not talking to any slides, I'm just talking off the top of my head. The next one is cultural integrity, the next principle. And here it is thinking about the not distorting or misplacing the culture. It might be, not placing a sacred story that's in an artwork on a carpet where it's walked upon and demeaned, or changing the colour in stark ways that take away the sort of fluidity of the work. Now, these might be, some of you might think, yes, we have the right of integrity and moral rights. This one here is more about the cultural integrity and thinking about the context in the story, the spirit of the work. 6 is secrecy and privacy. So in Indigenous culture, it's important to respect any restrictions on any knowledge that might be included in art, the stories associated with it. You hear men and women's business talked about, but there might be inside knowledge of places that are depicted in artworks. So think about that the work that you're working within your brand, it's not exposing anything secret or sacred in its publication. And also there's that second part of this, which is privacy, thinking about how, the privacy of communities and individuals is respected in the way that you use their cultural stories and artwork, by promoting the cultural product that you're creating. Attribution is the next principle, and this is about giving credit, yes, to the artist, which is a moral right under the copyright law, but also the community, and thinking about it being as a cultural attribution rather than just legal. And we've been working in the work that we do with having, traditional custodians notice, or talking about the story of the artwork. You see the accompanying a story attached to the reproduction. And this is where we're acknowledging that art comes from place, it has a particular connection to the artist, there's respect for the community that needs to be considered when you're interacting with that design. And these days, attributions also include notice that you must respect protocols, and that, like a copyright notice, you're not just going to reuse it. You have to, if you want to engage with that work, you have to go back to the artist and the community. 8 is benefit sharing. This is ensuring artists and communities receive their benefits, such as royalties, payments, or investment in the community if there's non-monetary benefits to be had. 9 is maintaining cultures. So this is where the cultural survival or strengthening and the interaction between generations needs to be considered. So these days, just giving and people knowing where the artwork ends up is, a good step. It's a basic step, but is there any way that the project can give greater life to that intergenerational flow of knowledge and artistic expression? And that could be like enabling younger people to be involved, allowing, the projects to revitalise traditions or languages, or some way connected with that greater maintenance of culture. And now the last one is recognition and protection. So as I said at the start, ICIP, Indigenous cultural and intellectual property rights, they're not protected at law. So we use legal tools, notices, protocols to protect ICIP and spread the message throughout the world, and to potential users and engagers of the art to understand their obligations to not just copy or adapt or use it without having reverence and respect. So recognition and protection can be things like having ICIP clauses in contracts, having protocols, about how you go back and check with that the reproduction is done right, and having notices, and also engaging in education and discussions about this. So just to wrap up, these are the 10 principles that I put to you as being a good pathway to doing it right. We call it True Tracks. Have a look out for my book. We do some workshops here, but what does doing it right look like? It's about early engagement, clear licensing agreements, thinking about consent, documenting it, and having conversations with relevant First Nations people, and lastly, sharing the benefits. So respectful brand alignment is about relationships. It's not just about replication. It's about co-creating with consent and not just borrowing from branding. So I'll stop there and just encourage you to respect, give reciprocity, and also that reputational enhancement will follow, because it's not just about what you're doing, it's how you do it, and it's building those deep relationships that can, really promote Aboriginal art in a respectful way. So that's what it means to walk the true tracks. So over and out, back to you, Arlette.
Thank you, Terri. Thanks for that insight. I know when I first started at Copyright Agency 8 years ago, one of the first things I did was do the True Tracks workshop. I was lucky enough to have Terri do the workshop, so that was fantastic. And I recommend it to everyone watching today. It is a great workshop and very insightful. You learn a lot. You walk away with so much knowledge, and it's a great thing to do if you do want to do, especially if you want to do licensing projects. I'm now very pleased to introduce two guests from Warmun Arts Centre in Western Australia in the Kimberley region. Warmun Arts Centre is one of my beloved art centres that I work with. April Nulgit is the chairperson of the organisation. She is a gallery associate, training to be gallery coordinator, and she is a talented fourth generation artist, amazing artist. And Ravi Schneider, who is the Warmun Arts Centre manager, and I've been working with Ravi for a few years now. So over to you guys.
Thank you so much, Arlette, and everyone here. Happy NAIDOC Week.
Yay.
Yay. We're very excited to be here and truly grateful to have this honor of speaking and sharing a little bit of our story and our experience as well with Copyright Agency, as well as with general protocols and procedures that we do here. I'll start by, of course, acknowledging the people of this land. We are on Gija country in the East Kimberleys in Western Australia, past, present, and future. And perhaps you could do the mantra. Warmun Arts Centre is probably one of the most recognized, highly regarded, and important institutes for both cultural preservation and the art movement. This is the birthplace of where the contemporary Aboriginal art movement started, and the place itself was established by 5 visionaries, including Rover Thomas, Queenie Mackenzie, Jack Britton, Hector Jundaloo, and Madigan Thomas. In this community, we have around 350 members, and we represent over 60 active artists that span over 5 generations, at least in one family already, and the age ranges all the way from 92 to 10 years old. We work here to, of course, preserve culture and every element of the identity of Gija people. We protect the stories and the IP, or the knowledge, and we are absolutely about building the futures, and one that will be sustained and continue forevermore for everyone. I'm so proud to present April and to have her here today. Yeah. April is my personal mentor, but she is the youngest ever chairperson for the organization. She's an emerging leader for the community, and her wisdom goes way beyond her years. She's also extremely talented artist, and I learn from her every single day. So, April, it's more about you. So, I would just, can you share a little bit about yourself, about your art, about your history or your legacy, your family? How did you start? Where did you start?
Well, I come from a long line of visionaries, family and artists. In my generation, in my family, I'm fourth generation. And then I started painting at the age of 9, 10 years old. And that was through looking at my family members, mother, grandfather, great-grandparents, paint all the time. And that influenced me and played a big role in how I began to paint.
Incredible.
At that time. Yeah.
So they, how does this connection to mother's side, father's side, and all the people that influenced your art and are inspiring you or your role models?
Well, my father is a Ngarinyan man, so he's more Derby region way, whereas my mother is a Gija woman, so she's from here. And so it's about representing both mother and father when I paint, knowing who I am as in my identity as a Gija woman, Ngarinyan woman as well, and the culture and stories that maintain around that through mother and father side.
And with the Dreamtime stories, is there something that really speaks to you? Is how significant it is in your arts? And
I think it's very important because these stories they hold. Yeah, I think it's very important for younger ones, as it was once told to me by my elders, and so on from their elders, and from passed on from generation to generation. It teaches us to have the deepest respect for country, for the stories, for our ancestors, and the areas on where it's based on. So where that area is our own country, to show, have that respect.
So what do you mean by that? Your areas, your stories, what does that mean? How is that reflected in the art here?
Because everyone, even though we're all Gija, we're not all from that same area. We all have different places and areas that we come from. And so there is that sense of respect in line. There's a border in place so that we don't overstep that border by disrespecting. So we're only allowed to paint what's authentic to us and what our connection is, where it is.
True blue all the way.
True blue all the way. Yep.
Is there a specific Dreamtime story that is really something that you?
Yep.
Not now.
Well, in my mother's country, there's this special place called Red Butt. Red Butt, and it's about this witch that once lived in a cave that ran away with 2 younger boys. Long ago in the Dreamtime, where she kept them there for months on end. They eventually escaped, went back to their tribe, which they had 6 elder brothers. Where it was a bit scary, and the area that we go out to on that place where we set up camp is that hill that the witch stays in is directly across from where we would set up camp. And so that cave is just there. And so at night we'd always be told not to make noise or that witch gonna come out. And her name was Gangaimi. So, or her cries could still be heard throughout the hills and that landscape at night if we're not too careful. And that's the story I tell my kids now. Special Dreamtime stories.
And as the youngest chairperson for the organization, how do you see your role and the organization's role in the younger generation in building them up or representing?
I think it's important because it is the next generation coming up, emerging leaders. It's important because it gives them something to look to as well, to step up, get out of their comfort zone, because it's not easy, but something that I think it's important that our younger ones need to step up and lead this generation. Of course, with the guidance of our elders all the time. Yeah.
And what values do you follow in
I think as
being an emerging leader as well?
it's always listening to the people in my experience, always listening to the people on the ground and the community, being open-minded as well, respectful as well when working together and moving forward together strong.
Amen to
That's
that.
what I
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
question to me.
Oh, yep. I'll give you question, Ravi. So where's that? He's gonna make the question. Okay, so Ravi.
Yeah.
So what does respectful collaboration between a business and a First Nations artist look like from your perspective?
Well, I see my role as a huge privilege. I hold this imaginary basket that holds all the dreams, aspirations, wishes, wants, and needs, as well as challenges. And taking all of that, listening very, very carefully to the people here, and basically making that happen on the ground. It's also my deepest responsibility to make sure that not only all the artists are represented with respect and celebration, but also that they're protected and looked after on every element of their career. So we work very hard to ensure that protection and that everyone is respected with pride, if it's culturally, if it's creatively, as well as legally. So I'm guided by a very strong governance. Aside to our old people, the very, very few that we have left that are in every single decision that we make. There's also the elected board once a year in the AGM, and the cultural leaders, emerging and senior, and as well as, of course, the artists and the members of this community in a broader scale. And this governance basically provides the grounding or all the protocols of how to act, how to be, both culturally and Gadia way or Whitefellow way.
Yeah.
So with every artist that I have here, we try to build a very extensive opportunity, from exhibitions to art awards to art fairs to markets, and of course the ongoing development, creative development as well as professional development, to enhance the possibilities that they can share their story, share their knowledge, share their vision and their expression through the arts. We are guided by ORIC and CATSI Act, and we have a very strong support system from the Indigenous Art Code to Arts Law to Landers and Rogers, and of course, Copyright Agency and resale royalties. So every single time an artwork is created, which everything is done in-house, it's documented properly, the story is taken, the artist's biography is, of course, updated on a regular basis as they develop in their career, and we ensure that the imagery is correct and that every artwork here is true blue to the very T and has all the backings to showcase that. We are also have, of course, our online and presence and the profiles on our social medias. And very, very shortly, we will finally launch our new website as well, which will be very updated and true blue to where we are today. So we have some extremely, extremely established artists here, world-renowned, as well as emerging stars that are just creating huge footsteps to follow. And alongside to that, some incredible new developments and basically new ideas coming out from products and merch, like the locally designed Geisha artware and the Geisha home styling. And even though these are artists that work with Warmun Art Center and are represented by the organization, I still need to call Arlette, which we're so very lucky to work with, and to create a license every single time there's something that is produced. And it doesn't matter how many times it will be reproduced. We will need again and again to reach out to Arlette to create the best possible contract for the artist and about the artist. So this license is ongoing. It's not one of that allows us permission to sell the artworks and to present those. It has to be continuously with permissions and with agreements that are signed. Which brings to another important element that we put in place here in Warmun, which is the language barrier. And because for many, English is not the first language that is spoken, it's really important for us that every single contract signed, every single agreement that is in place, we explain it and bring it to eye-level English so people really understand what they are signing and have full comprehensive idea of what this agreement is about, what their benefits are, what their responsibilities are, and that everything is transparent, clear, and again, true blue. So we are very lucky to have extremely, extremely close relationships with our partners that are supporting us throughout every step of the way. It's not for granted at all. Highly, highly recommend for anyone that hasn't done it until now to really go through the right processes and procedures, because the more elders that we lose, the more the knowledge that is gone. We really need to protect it with everything we've got, so it continues for generations to come, and it's led by the next generations to be, and that all the cultures that are still here and that still exist remain alive and strong for forever. So that's the way to do it. And when all of this is in place, there's less opportunity for people to be exploited, or for any misunderstandings to be in place, and for any even disappointments, I guess, because it's clear from get-go. So I feel very, very lucky, and I feel very jealous of myself sometimes, of the honor that I have and also the privilege that I have, not only to represent, but to hold this imaginary basket I spoke about, and to ensure that our artists are seen, that they're heard, that they're respected and celebrated across the country and internationally and multi-generation, and that it will continue for many more. So back to you, Arlette.
Oh, thank you so much, April and Ravi. I love hearing your stories. They're just incredible, and I love working with Warmun. It is amazing. And what Ravi just brought up was if art centres which are Aboriginal owned and governed, who represent the artists in community, are actually asking their artists to have independent representation for the licensing that's happening for the art centre, that just shows you how important it is that when you are doing business with artists, that those artists do have independent representation. So thank you again, April and Ravi. So the next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to talk a bit about copyright agency and what best practice is when you're licensing. Just a quick bit of background if you have not heard of who we are and what we do, but we've been around for 50 years. We're a non-profit organisation, and we're the visual arts team are dedicated to artwork reproduction licensing. We ensure ethical process and fair payments when licensing artworks. We currently represent over 80 Indigenous Aboriginal owned and governed art centres and thousands of independent artists across cities and regional areas. Our artists are asked for licensing everything from galleries and museums, government departments, architectural and interior design. I do fashion and homeware licensing, right down to an academic who is putting an artwork in their thesis or journal. So we do small licenses and large licenses. It doesn't matter. It's all about the artwork and protecting that artwork. So our role is to negotiate a fair and reasonable licensing fee to ensure all the artworks are properly attributed, something that Terri talked about, that the layouts are approved and by the artist or by the estate, that there is a best practice license agreement that's usually drafted by our in-house lawyers. We handle all the invoicing and we pay the artists or the art centres directly. It's important that you know that artists need specialist representation to ensure fairness, and they need access to legal advice sometimes. And that's very important that you give them time. I cannot begin to tell you the two things that are the most important when you're working with an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander artist is time. They mostly want to talk amongst themselves, talk with their families, talk with the art centre manager, but just time to think about the project, think about the artwork. They know more than we do, so about their art, and we need to give them time to reflect, to understand what the license project is. So whether you're a non-profit organisation working in the Indigenous sector or a government department or an education sector or a private company, it's really important that you allow time for the artist to understand the project and the process that's going to happen. And the first thing I ask you all to do is research. Research. Get onto the Indigenous Art Code website. That's a voluntary code of conduct. Get onto NAVA, Copyright Council, Arts Law, Copyright Agency websites and learn. And then also research the art. What sort of art do you want? I always advise when someone comes through us is, where are you based? Who are your local artists? That is the first step in doing your research, is finding out who are your local artists that you can work with. The second thing is transparency. You need to be honest and transparent about the project. I cannot begin to say what transparency means to you, but it means a lot to the artist. They need to understand what is involved, how much involvement is required of them, and they need to know the whole project from start to end at the very beginning, so they can think about the project and decide whether it is for them and whether their artwork is the correct artwork for that project. Each licensing project is unique. So even if I work with the same brand over and over again, I renegotiate the deal, renegotiate the license every time, because each artist and each artwork is unique. They want different outcomes. The terms and conditions can be different. Terms and conditions are just as important as the license fee. I think everyone has this idea that the license fee is very important. Yes, it is. An artist deserves compensation through royalties or an upfront payment, but those terms and conditions about what you can and cannot do with the artwork is so important, and that's what I spend a lot of time negotiating, understanding the project for the artist, because we're representing the artist in the project. Some red flags that I always look out for is, number one, is when the client asks to own the copyright of the artwork. That just is my first big red flag. In the 8 years that I've worked at Copyright Agency, we have never agreed to this. Our artists have never agreed to this. So that's a red flag. Another red flag is when they talk about, which is a real bugbear for many people in my sector, is when the client talks about the exposure or the promotion of the artist. Well, I'm sorry, we always say it's the artwork that's promoting you or exposing the project. So please don't use that wording. It's just not the right way to approach a license. Another red flag is when you do a workshop. Yes, you might pay the artist to come and do the workshop, but you get them to sign forms or waivers at the very beginning, and you end up owning the artwork that's produced in the workshop. And then you go and put it on sides of buildings or massive big reproductions. And the artist had no idea that when they were going into this workshop to produce some artwork for, maybe it's a new hospital or it's a government department, and then their artwork is literally, they see their artwork being reproduced on the side of a building. It's just a big red flag, those workshops where they're paid and you're making them sign. Same with football teams that ask school children to design artworks and then they're used for their Indigenous round uniforms. Big red flag. Sending out expressions of interest to artists, especially in regional areas where there isn't enough information. They don't know what the fee is going to be. They don't know how to quote a fee, and there's not enough information in those expressions of interest. I cannot tell you how many times a week I get calls about expressions of interest, and there's just not enough information for them to be able to quote a fee, to understand the project, and yet you're asking them to sign a legally binding document without enough information. I'm always puzzled by those things. So when I'm negotiating on behalf of the artist, I always think about what is best for the artist, what is best for the artwork, but also what is best for the project. We want it to succeed. We want it to be successful. We want it to be amazing. We want you to be delighted. The artist wants to have a relationship with you. We're not there to stop you from having a relationship with the artist. We know that that's one of the most amazing things about doing a collaboration, is that whole learning backwards and forwards between the artist and the client. It's wonderful to watch. I cannot tell you how working on projects at Copyright Agency with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists, how exciting it is when a fashion brand launches or a homeware brand launches or an architectural piece goes up and there's this amazing artwork. There is so much pride. And that's what we want to see. We want to see that. We want you to come back and do more with that artist, with that art centre, with other artists, and learn and communicate and have those growing relationships. And that's what an ethical licensing pathway is learning from each other, respecting each other, but really giving time to the artist to understand the whole process. We love working on those types of licensing projects on behalf of the artist, but we sit back and let you guys also have that relationship, which I think is so important for all licensing agreements. And it's a mutual respect, which is wonderful to watch on the side. We're there if the artist, the good thing about Copyright Agency is we represent the artist. We're there in case there's an issue. There's that balance of power. You don't understand, you guys with government or with private businesses, that there isn't a balance of power, and we're there to represent the artist and make sure that they have a voice, that they have that voice. If they have concerns, if they don't feel comfortable, there is someone there that they can go to and say, hey, you know, can you look into this? We want to just double check this, or we're not happy with the way this is going. And that's very important for the success of the project in the end, is that everyone knows what's going on and the artist has that voice. I know I find it hard to advocate for myself. So as an artist, with sometimes English is their second, third or fourth language, to be able to advocate for themselves is very hard. It's always best to have someone else do that for you, that's there for you, that you can discuss. So it's giving the artist the opportunity to have someone represent them throughout the process. Yeah, so that's my little spiel on ethical licensing. We will be taking questions. I'd like to welcome back Terri, April and Ravi into the conversation, and we're going to take some questions. So let me see. I think we've got some questions happening on the side. Let me just bring the questions up. Sorry. Here we go. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to actually start by asking, here we go, all the questions are coming through thick and fast now, so I'm so sorry. But Ravi, just
please
with
add.
you, sorry,
yeah.
I'm just going to ask you a question. When
May
someone reaches, sorry?
May I please add that even though it's one of our main goals is to create as many opportunities for all the artists to be represented, it does not mean that we have to jump on every single opportunity that comes our way. Having that moment of sitting, taking a step back, looking at the actual opportunity, speaking to the artist, conveying to the artist the benefits and the challenges, and really having, through that personal consultation, their very clear statement of, yes, I'd like to go through with this, let's make it happen, and let's find the way, and this is the license that I would like, and these are my terms. Just to know that they have that right to put their terms, their conditions, and that someone is listening there, and that someone is, by that someone I mean you, Arlette, and then writing that license for their benefit. And of course, it should be for granted, but unfortunately it's not. So even just that understanding, that initial understanding that yes, opportunities are there, we will try to create as many as possible, but it does not mean that you have to accept every single one if the terms are not suitable or doesn't answer, or right now, sorry, doesn't provide with the actual support that that artist, or respect that that artist deserves. So
Yeah.
we had an incident like that, and it was in the end, it was just, no, we are not interested in this opportunity, even though it was a very, very good one on paper. Or as an idea, the bottom line didn't fit how we work here, and didn't support our artist. So therefore we didn't go through with that. And other came in the way. So it's basically making room inside for the right things to come in. So sorry but you wanted to raise something, or let's.
I just wanted to ask you for Warmun, when a business wants to approach, what is the best way to approach an art centre if they want to do a licensing project? You know, how do you feel that, what is respectful when they approach Warmun, a business or a government department, to do a licensing project? How do you What do you want to see happen?
Well, I'll divide it to three, but the initial approach is via either email or phone, just to discuss the request or the inquiry or the vision that they have and they would like to make happen. Of course, then inform the artist and make sure that the artist is aware to the whole concept, and hand in hand approach your. For us, it's approaching you and having your input or your feedback. What do you think? How does that look? Is it something that is worthwhile exploring? How can we incorporate into this agreement the artist needs, wishes, wants, and requests or terms, and then having that negotiated for the artist on behalf of the artist with that agency or with that organization or with that private person, whomever is approaching us, and in the end coming up with a very, very straightforward and very clear document or agreement that showcases the protection of the artist, the protection of the knowledge, and also allows for that story to still be shared. But it's not forever, it's not for granted, and if they want to redo that, they again need to approach the artist and the art center, and a new license will be put in place. So one license doesn't mean it's for life. It's something that every single time has to be renegotiated and rediscussed. And it also allows that time to see what works, what doesn't work. If the artist was happy, my responsibility in all of that is to take the agreement that you write after speaking to the artist directly and to the organization that the license is created for, and to make sure that the artist is well and truly understanding of every single line in that agreement before it's signed, so they're very comfortable moving forward. So I believe it's a team effort, and there's no I in team, but when you build that trust and when you build that relationship with the partners, with copyright agency, of course with the artist, and they truly believe and feel that they are really looked after, have a wraparound support, they understand fully everything, that's the only way to go in my eyes. That's the only ethical way, the only way to values both the artist, the knowledge, and the whole process in general, and ensures that it can't be exploited in the future.
I'd like to ask a question of Terri, if that's okay. We've got a question here. What's the one thing businesses often overlook when it comes to ICIP and copyright?
Thank you. I guess it's the time needed. Getting back to what Ravi said, they can leave it to, it's like, I got to have it by, and they have a deadline.
Yeah.
And as you've heard from April and Ravi, there's a lot of considerations. You know, the artist's got to think about the context. They need details about the project. So the biggest mistake for a company or a government department or someone who's wanting to reproduce the work is to not give enough time. And early engagement, early thinking about it is really important. And not to just expect that it's a given. Like you heard Ravi and April say, that they will think about it and walk away if they don't have an alignment of values, or that it doesn't meet the artist's sort of standards of what is an ethical project. So, and you know, the context might drive that decision, and the willingness of the party, the person who wants to reproduce the art, the willingness of the party to engage in this process and understand it's not just, I've got the idea, here you go, sign this. The willingness of them to engage in this relationship that's going back and forth, and thinking about the context, thinking about the attribution, thinking about the benefits, thinking about if the artists can, you know, come to an opening, or is there an event that celebrates culture. I think that is what companies, businesses and governments overlook.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks, Terry. April, just a quick question to you, if that's okay. We've got one here. What makes you feel that your voice and culture are being respected in a commercial project?
Is that through that gallery? It's more working, like once, yeah, like I guess it's better about what Ravi mentioned, but of working and talking and seeing what lines up with the artists and how they feel about if it's respected, transparent. Yes, that kind of feel more leaning towards that. Is what I feel, in my opinion, as well.
Thank
That
you.
makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total
Yeah.
sense, April. Total sense.
Yeah.
I just add to what Terry and what
Yes.
we spoke about just a second ago, is that sometimes it has the idea is beautiful, but it also needs to be culturally appropriate. So there's certain subject matters and stories that can't be on a rug or on a towel or on something that it's just, we have to match also the request with the actual story and the actual knowledge that is shared. So it's something that is part of the negotiation, part of that understanding. But if an artist say, I do not feel comfortable with this story to appear on a train station poster or on a towel that someone uses for in the gym, or if it's something that needs to be heard and respected and acknowledged and not misused in that manner or way. There's also some stories that are men's business and women's business and things that are more sacred and private and are not meant to be reproduced in any form, shape, or way. It's for the people and for their transferring the knowledge throughout the generations. Just wanted to add that it's also the requests have to be culturally appropriate and to make sure that we are sensitive in that way, understanding that that kind of discussion needs to happen as well.
That's so true. That's that Indigenous cultural intellectual property, which is so important. And I do recommend everyone do the True Tracks workshop to learn as much as they can. Thank you for that, Ravi and April. And that kind of brings us, yes, to the end of today's webinar. I want a huge thank you to Dr. Terri Janke. She is an exceptionally busy woman, and to carve out an hour for us today we're very thankful. Ravi Schneider and April Nulgit, so wonderful to see you in person. We love it, or on screen. And to all of you for being here and engaging in this really important conversation. I'd also like to thank Dane, who is from our comms department, who has worked to bring this webinar together and guided us through it. Thank you, Dane. We'll send a link through for the recording and any useful resources tomorrow for all those people that signed up. Thanks again for being part of this conversation and for taking the time to listen and learn. I know I learn every day in my role and I love it. I hope today has given you some inspiration and clarity about what it means to work respectfully with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists, and wishing you all a meaningful NAIDOC week. We look forward to continuing this work together. Thank you again and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arlette.
Thanks.
Thank you, April and Ravi.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.